Unique people leading unique lives shape and inform Iowa City. This community is enhanced by these women and men who live in our midst, working, teaching, creating. Welcome to a series of conversations with people who have stories to tell. Join my guests and me, Ellen Buchanan, in a series of interviews called One of a Kind. Herb Wilson is a businessman, a community service volunteer, a philanthropist, a husband, father, and grandfather. A 1951 graduate of Purdue University, Herb received his MBA from the University of Chicago in 1959. He is past president of the board of Hoover Library Association, past member of the Mercy Hospital Foundation Board, past president of the Muscatine and the Iowa City AM Rotary Clubs, chair of the University of Iowa Hancher Ovation Drive, elder of the First Presbyterian Church. He was president and longtime trustee at the Prussel School of Music and president of the Prussel Foundation. Now, I'm just mentioning a few of his involvements. The professional fundraising executives of Eastern Iowa named Herb the Outstanding Volunteer Fundraiser in 1990. And in 1997, Herb and his wife Janice were honored with the Outstanding Individual Philanthropist Award. In his own words, he has, and I quote, enjoyed a long career in engineering and management positions in a number of industries, concentrating on long-term planning, acquisitions, starting new ventures, and venture capital investments, end quote. Herb was owner and president of Microservice Finishing Products in Wilton, Iowa, and currently is owner and president of Startups Unlimited, Inc., a consulting firm specializing in new business ventures. Herb and his wife Janice have 4 children and 10 grandchildren. His other interests include singing. He's been a church choir member for 50 years, tennis, racquetball, travel, and the performing arts. Welcome to One of a Kind. This is going to be fun.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Your story, I know, begins in Chicago in 1928. Tell me about your first family and their influence on you.
Well, my first family was a large one. I am the last of 8 children, and a wonderful position to be in. You have certainly a lot. You're surrounded with authority.
Yes.
But you're also surrounded with people that know more than you do. Mm-hmm. And can give you lots of guidance and help and assistance. I can't think of anything I didn't learn at home first. The school was the refresher and the cementer of some of those ideas, mm-hmm. But my home was a wonderful learning experience. And after that start, I've enjoyed education and learning the rest of my life, and I still do.
Your mother was born, you told me, in Germany, and she was quite an athlete. She played basketball and was on, tell me about this.
Well, yes. My mother was born in Germany, came over when she was 7 in 1993 with her parents and her brother and sister, and lived in Chicago on the south side. And she went to high school and she played basketball, and in 1903 she played on the Cook County championship team from Lake High School.
And you showed me a picture of their uniforms. They were covered from their tops to their toes, weren't they?
In black.
In black.
In black, yes, they were.
And now your father's family were longtime residents of this country. They came, what'd you say, in the 1700s?
Sometime in the 1700s. We're studying a genealogy right now, primarily a nephew of mine, having a wonderful time doing so. And we know they were here at the time of the Revolutionary War, went to Cooperstown, did some things, and came down and the river, the Ohio River, went up to Chillicothe and built a sawmill mm-hmm. In an area that had the Wilson Bridge and the Wilson School until they were both torn down to make room for Interstate 70, or 71, pardon me, Interstate 71.
Now, what did your father do?
My father was a salesman and spent the last 38 years as a salesman for Prudential Insurance Company.
Now, your sisters you have 5 sisters.
Yes, I have.
And they're still living,
Yes,
and
they
you
are.
see a lot of them, don't you?
Every chance I get, they're all in a cluster in Chicago, within about 5 south suburb, about 5 miles from each other. We try to see them at least once a month and more frequently.
Mm-hmm. I remember meeting them here, and they're very positive women, full of goodwill.
Well, we had a very active bunch. Unfortunately, my two brothers, who were the eldest in the family, died early. But my sisters and I still survive. We do a lot of things together. I remember as a youngster, there was a girls softball team. It was my 5 sisters and 4 other girls I don't remember. But that athletic tradition was in our family. My father was a great baseball player. Mm-hmm. And not surprisingly, that was my great love growing up.
Well, you could watch the Cubs play?
Well, the White Sox.
Or the White Sox.
We were Southsiders.
Oh,
we watched the White Sox.
White Sox.
Cubs were the other team.
Okay. Now tell me, when you were young, I read that like all young boys, you had a paper route, and that's not the unusual thing. The unusual thing is that you saved your money and you paid your way. You bought your first suit, you paid your way to church camp, and you bought your first car. Was that important to you, to pay your own way? Or was that out of necessity?
That was basically out of necessity, but it was a nice necessity. I didn't object to that at all, and it certainly gave me a focus. Mm-hmm. Those were Depression years, and with 8 children and all, and the wages being what they were fairly difficult times, although one of my eldest sister went to Purdue and graduated home economics in 1940. I've never figured out how the family did that, but they did get it done. Mm-hmm. But those lessons were great. I earned my money on the newspaper route, riding my sister's bicycle to earn enough money to buy me a used bike. Mm-hmm. And I bought myself my first new bike when I was 31 years old. I remember it well.
31?
Yes, first new bike I ever had.
Do you remember what kind it was?
Oh, yes, it was a Schwinn. It was a tandem, because now I had a partner to share it with.
Oh, tandem. Your first bike was a tandem.
Bicycle built for 2, yes.
So after you graduated from high school, you enlisted in the Navy.
Well, I did. Yes, it was right after the war. I enlisted in the Navy in January 1946.
And you were sent to Alaska?
Well, they sent me to hospital corps school,
mm-hmm.
which was a nice experience, and I became a hospital corpsman and a pharmacist mate. I served most of my time in Adak, Alaska, which it was wonderful. We had shore leave every weekend and no place to go.
Yeah, right.
But I had my first plane trips flying out to Alaska, and my third and fourth plane trips flying back from Alaska. So.
And these men you met at that time, you've kept in contact with them all these years?
Well, only a few. But one of them, strangely enough, is right out from Wellman, and I met him on several occasions, and know other people that know him.
So when you enrolled in Purdue, you were taking math and science, but you really wanted to be an engineer. Where did this come from?
Well, as a young man, I guess I was always fixing things and taking things apart. At a pretty young age, I became very much the man of the family, doing everything around the house. And I bought my first car when I was 15. And immediately threw a rod in the engine and had the opportunity or the necessity again, I guess, really, to overhaul the engine, and it was beyond overhaul. So I bought another car. We took the engine out of it, took it downstairs in the basement, overhauled it completely, and just polished the valves and ground the valves until they were all that they should be, and reassembled the engine, took it out, hung it back in the car, and away we went. And I think I was about 16 at the time. I bought the car when I was 15. And following that, my father said, why don't you overhaul my car too? So I overhauled my father's car when I was 16, 17 mm-hmm. years old. And the science has always interested me, and I've been a problem solver. I'd love to solve problems or do puzzles mm-hmm. as a youngster. I many times would do 10 crossword or jigsaw puzzles a week with my mother, frequently in the evening, and the spatial conception and putting things together mm-hmm. is a part of my life. And I like solving the problems, and I like doing those exercises. So engineering was a very natural place for me to go.
I read in the research that your father was very fond of the University of Chicago.
Well, yes, let me say, University of Chicago has a great reputation, and I was told later that my father always hoped one of his children would go to the University of Chicago. And I was very proud that I was able to do that.
Was he still living when you?
Oh, very much so. Unfortunately, my mother had died by that time, but it was a very happy day in our family.
So what happened next in your work career after you graduated?
Well, I had held a couple of engineering positions, and but with an MBA under my arm, I was able to land a job as a manager of corporate planning, which, as far as I'm concerned, enveloped the whole operation of a company, which I loved, and I think I thrived in that environment. I was exposed to all the forward planning, the finances, the marketing, the organization, and just had a wonderful time doing that. However, I was doing that for Atlas Steels up in Canada, a very progressive steel company, but they got merged, and that resulted in my returning to the United States to a small steel mill in Joliet, and then they got merged. An acquisition I actually put together. So I can't complain. The only problem was, as we were being acquired by the parent company was also being acquired. And I just didn't like what I saw happening, and so I left again. I haven't had a very good merger experience. So I then made a switch in careers, and went from being vice president of a steel mill to being vice president of a large printing firm. And I found out what I always believed, is that management skills are transferable. And I was very happily engaged in Chicago, raising our 4 children. And a friend of mine had an acquaintance who was involved in the planning for a new steel mill in Iowa, and he was concerned that the board of directors in Iowa really didn't have a good grasp of what they were getting into. So my friend arranged an interview, and the rest is history. I talked with him a few times, gave him some ideas and suggestions, developed an interest in coming, was offered the job, and came and undertook.
What year was that?
That was 1973, and we relocated to Iowa, moved to Iowa City, and I began to plan for the purchase of the land, the hiring of the people, hiring the engineers, and the construction of a steel mill.
Commuting to
in Wilton, Iowa.
In Wilton, Iowa.
That's correct.
So.
And that too went very, very well, and we got it up and operating, and guess what?
What? It merged.
We sold the company to North Star Steel, and that made another change, which was very important in my life, and I agreed with the acquiring company to stay with the company and have to weigh my options once I had completed what I told them I would do, and that's build a steel mill. And when I got to that point, I decided I would be better off in another open field, perhaps with a little more flexibility. And so I left and searched around with what I would do, and Janice and I talked about leaving the area, and I can tell you that I didn't fly with her or with me. We actually took a long trip, and we took a pencil and paper and went off and wrote down what we wanted to do with the rest of our lives. That was some time ago. That was about 1977. And interesting, and I can tell you that on top of both of our lists was do not leave Iowa City. And we haven't, and we're not going to, and we just love it.
Well, we're glad you stayed. We're really glad you stayed.
Well, it's a wonderful place to be and to raise your family and your grandchildren, and we've been extremely happy here.
Before I ask you about Janice, talk about this company that you just sold recently. You said it, I think, was the end of 1999.
That's correct. Well, and that's a company I bought. Actually, I went to work for them in 1977. And it's an abrasive company. It was called Micro Surface Finishing Products. And I gathered up all the pennies, nickels, and dimes I had it, and bought that company. And in 1980, I worked there for a few years to make sure that was the right move. And we owned and operated that company, Janice and I, until we sold it December of 1999.
And tell people what it made.
Well, we make a very, very fine abrasive, as most of my customers will tell you, a very expensive abrasive. Mm-hmm. But it's a very, very fine abrasive, and our claim to fame is that with our abrasive, we can, in a very controlled way, make scratch patterns which are finer and finer and finer until they're ultimately invisible to the naked eye. Now, one of the early applications for that was in the polishing of aircraft windows, which you may know are plastic or acrylic, very special plastic. And so our product was found use in the original manufacture of those acrylic products, as well as in the maintenance and upkeep of those products. And early on, we had great interest with the military, and we produced I don't know how many thousands of military kits. One of our employees wrote the military specification, and so we enjoyed that business for a long, long time. And we took it into other aspects, and one of the interesting ones is the nail buffer, which most of my lady friends, or Janice's lady friends, I should say, have enjoyed. And I'm not sure. I used to know how many of those we made. It was 70, 80 million last time I counted. I suppose it's over 100 million now. But we also polish anything else that needs a very high quality surface finish.
You mentioned, let's talk about, you knew Janice, this is your life's partner, in high school, but you didn't date for a while. Was it later on after college or during college?
Yes, it was during college, actually. I actually met Janice, or knew her, I should say, long before high school. She used to walk to Brownies across the street to the little church down on our block. And she was with other girls that I knew from school. But she was 2 years behind me in school. We never dated in high school or at all, although I did give her rides home in my car once in a while. She was the good friend of my boyfriend's younger sister, so that's how that came about. But I was back from the service and attending Purdue and trying to get out to a dance at our favorite rendezvous in Chicago, which was called O. Henry's Ballroom, marvelous place. And I think I had somewhere near 85% of my high school dates at O. Henry's. So I called Janice and said, what are you doing Saturday night? And she said she was available, and so we went. And I always knew she was a very attractive, bright girl, and the romance developed. But we started dating when I was just shy of my 21st birthday.
And 4 children you have, Janice, and you have 4 children, and where are they located?
Well, our 4 children, let me give you a little rundown.
All right.
Our oldest, our first child was Charles. He was born in 1995, I think, 55. And he attended Purdue University, of all things. Became an engineer. Can't imagine where that came from.
Right.
And he went on then to Stanford to get a master's in EE, and then went on to get an MBA at UCal Northridge. He lives in California with his wife and 2 children. And his oldest daughter is our first grandchild, and she's starting Stanford in the fall. And he has a son who's about 16 years old.
And the next? The
next son is Stephen, and he is, we left him behind when we moved to Iowa. He was a captain of the cross-country team and the track team, and he had to stay behind for senior year, so we arranged that in Naperville, Illinois. And then he came to the University of Iowa. It's an interesting story here. Stephen had told us before he was going to the University of Iowa. And, of course, I had no idea we were going to move in this direction. So, lo and behold, we wind up moving out here, and I said, we're going to go to college now. He says, I'm still going to the University of Iowa. So he did. Went through, became a doctor in family practice. He's been practicing for years. He now lives with his wife, Mirja, who is from Finland. He met her while she was here studying to improve her English. And so they had a wonderful romance through her 4 years of college, and they now live in Pullman, Washington, where he is practicing, and they have a son and a daughter. They're teenagers, Chris and Lara, about 16 and 14 at the present time. Number 3 is my son Keith, who moved with us to Iowa just in time to start his 3 years of high school. And he graduated, went to the University of Iowa and got a business degree. And following that, in 1981, joined me in the operations of microsurface finishing products. Keith was married and had one son and two daughters. Mm-hmm. And his oldest daughter is our second grandchild. Our youngest is Amy, and Amy moved with us here and started junior high and then high school at City High, and stayed locally. She had some college experience. She went to Kirkwood, and she I think she's still currently enrolled at the University of Iowa. But with 3 children, she has put her degree things on hold. She tells me she's going to finish, and I said, "Do it for yourself, dear, not for me." But I really expect Amy to finish that someday. She has 3 wonderful children, 2 of which are the youngest of our grandchildren, and actually 3 of the 4 are the youngest of our grandchildren.
You're busy,
quite
busy,
a spread.
Quite a spread.
She married David Nicholson. They live here in town, and needless to say, we have a wonderful time with all of our grandchildren, and we're going to all be together again Christmas time. So
great. You're going to have a very loud and busy household come Christmas. Tell me, Herb, looking back on your life, what event or person or persons had a influence on you?
Well, undoubtedly, the largest influence I feel is by my mother and father, and I've revered them always, and ever more so that they're no longer with us. Mm-hmm. They had, I think, tremendous influence. I can't think of anything I say, think, or do that I can't see some of my parents in that activity. Mm-hmm. Certainly my father sang in the choir. As a matter of fact, all of our family sang in the choir.
Your father sang in the choir
My
too?
My father sang in the choir. When I was 16, I got to go and stand next to him. That's why I got started in church choir so early, really.
That's great.
But those 2 people had a tremendous influence in how they treated people and values and things, which have been great. And I then got into reading the books of Norman Vincent Peale that my father put before me, The Power of Positive Thinking, and Enthusiasm Makes a Difference. And I learned from those books, I guess, not to be a positive thinker, because I am, and I hope I always am. But I learned about how to reinforce that and to bring that around when it seems to be slipping away, and the importance to bring it around when it's slipping away. And then Enthusiasm Makes the Difference. I really learned that, if I'm really not enthusiastic about something, I probably shouldn't do it, because I'll do it half well or half committed. And so I read all of his books, and that was very important to me, and cemented those early learnings. And I learned to be committed through this, to have a commitment to things that are worthwhile. And
do you consider that your greatest strength, or one of your greatest? It's hard to analyze oneself, but
I think perhaps it is. And I tell you, the people around me know I'm committed to something, and so if they like, they join me in that effort, and then we can do great things. And I might tell you the reverse side of that is, I really don't like trying to do something that's very challenging with somebody who's not very committed to it. And I'm very much involved in Rotary, as I think you know. And one of the things, I have a little slogan in Rotary which I use, and that is, where there is commitment, anything is possible. And so I like to do things that I'm committed to. I like to share what can happen when other people are committed to the same end. I really enjoyed working on a Habitat for Humanity house. Surprising. I thought, I've built houses, I've done things. Sure. But to be there, working shoulder to shoulder with a bunch of committed people is really fun.
And you and Janice have a large commitment, both your time and resources, to the Prusel School.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. That is, without a doubt, the most marvelous teaching institution I've ever seen. And what they can do with children, particularly at an early age, and get them going in the right direction. And I think once you get the use of those young energies going in the right direction, marvelous things happen. They develop talent to a degree that I think is borders on the unholy. It is absolutely marvelous. And committed people and committed staff. Doris Prussel is one of the most committed people I've ever met.
There's that commitment
God
word again.
bless her.
Yes.
Let me share something here with commitment. I think I can read it without my glasses, because I may just be a commitment nut. I'm not sure. But this was written by Mr. Murray on the Scottish Himalayan expedition in 1951. This is his comment about commitment. And I try and quote it, and I never do a good job, so I'd like to read it.
Sure, please do.
Until one is committed, there is hesitance, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would otherwise never have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance, which no man could have dreamt would have come his way. I have learned a deep respect for one of Goethe's couplets. Whatever you can do or dream, you can. Begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. I like that.
I do too.
I read it frequently.
Yes, it means a lot to you, doesn't it?
I share it with a lot of people. But you know, I think the commitment to build a house for Habitat for Humanity is there. We all get committed and we do it. And there's that magic moment when you say, can we, will we? You say, yes, we can, and we will. And I think that's when great things start to happen.
Well, I think you're living the entrepreneurship code, which is that you learn, earn, and then you give back. Where does this give back come from? I mean, was this just in your DNA, or is this somebody along the way urged you to give back, or?
You know, that too started early. You know, I went to church every Sunday and put my money in, and it wasn't much, and I know that was truly sacrificial giving at that time. But we always gave and we always shared. There was, in the early years, I remember a lot of people came by and knocked on your back door and asked for a meal. And I can tell you that they were never turned down at our house. And we always found something to share. I learned later on that these migrants who came along put a mark on the back fence that identified this house is easy. They will give you a meal. My sisters tell me about it. I don't know what the mark was or where it was on our fence, but learned that very much, to give and to share.
Did you live near a railroad track too?
We did happen to live near a railroad track,
did
yes,
we,
but
yes.
it was the local Rock Island train. But I remember those things in sharing and giving. And of course, if you're in a family of 8, you're sharing all the time. I smile because I married an only child.
Isn't that something?
and that's a little strange. But we were sharing constantly, and I can't remember we didn't share. Always doing for others. And so it came quite natural to me. And Janice and I were making pretty solid contributions at an early age when they were truly sacrificial. And we made some pledges very early on with the young family. And Janice says, how are we going to fulfill it? And I said, I don't know, but we will. And so we did. And there's worthwhile things around, like the Prussel School of Music, which I find it very easy to support in all the things they do. And universities, I love education. I admire what they do, and so we have supported them. And I certainly love the arts in Hampshire, which is one of the treasures, I think, in our community. And so we support them well. And I must say, we don't support everything. And although from what we get in the mail, you might think people must think we do, but we don't. We're quite selective, and but
when you're committed,
we do enjoy sharing things, and we have. I think that paying back is what we should do. And I really love the Rotary motto, which is service above self. I try to do that to the fullest extent.
Well, when you're not working and you're not being a grandfather, you and Janice love to travel, and you have a special love, I read in the research, for rivers. Where does this come from?
Well, I guess it kind of, I have to say it snuck up on me. We'd had a few ocean voyages, but we traveled on a few rivers, and they are wonderful because you have constant scenery on both sides. And you also, I can go to very familiar places and go down the river and you can see things I've never seen before in that community. So we traveled down the Yangtze River, I think was the first one we did in China, which was an absolutely marvelous experience. We're glad we got it done because now they're changing that whole contour over there. But then we traveled down the Nile River, and then we traveled on the Volga River. And since then we've done the Danube, 2 different sections of the Danube twice, and the Rhine River, and a few others, the Elbe River. And it's just a wonderful way to travel and see the countryside, and it's very, very different from the highways. And as Janice would say, it's very nice to hang all your clothes in the closet and have them there for the week.
Right, that unpacking and
an added
packing.
bonus.
Right. As you have now sold this company it was a big part of your life for many years, what are you looking forward to in this new millennium? Are you going to be mostly retired or never retired?
Well, I hope to remain interested and active. I like sharing what I've learned in life, although some people might want to or might not feel they could benefit from that, but I do enjoy lecturing at the university whenever I have the opportunity to. I like sharing experiences I've had. I like helping people. We will certainly travel more. I'm reading more already, which I do truly enjoy. I have a pretty good library. And
what kind of what are your tastes? What do you like?
Well, a lot of things. I really like history more than I ever thought I would. I read a lot of books on Herbert Hoover, though I revere as a very wonderful man. I think possibly the most educated and humanitarian person that's ever occupied the presidency. That may surprise some people. But just a marvelous, marvelous man. A lot of great talents. Also happened to be an engineer, which is maybe where some of the attraction comes from. But I just finished The Last Man on the Moon, which is a very interesting story about a Purdue astronaut. First and last man on the moon were both from Purdue.
Purdue means a lot to you, I can tell.
Purdue is a great place, just a marvelous place to be. Next year I'll celebrate my 50th anniversary of my graduation. Janice and I were just down to one of the presidential celebrations for Steve Bering, who's retiring after 17 years. A very dear friend, another man I have tremendous respect for.
Well, Herb, your life has been full, and I appreciate you sharing it with me today and the viewers, and thank you for being a guest.
It's been my pleasure. It's been my pleasure. We look forward to the coming years. We have a little family slogan I'd like to maybe close with.
Absolutely.
And it's from my son, Stephen, who at the bottom of a letter, after rambling all over the area, said, "Dad, life is great, but we are truly blessed." And we certainly have been.
Well, that's a wonderful way to end this show. Thank you. My guest on One of a Kind has been Herb Wilson, an outstanding philanthropist and businessman. His philosophy is pay back, give back, and help others. And that is exactly what he has done. So many areas in our community have been touched by Herb and Janice's generosity. His passions include starting new companies, solving problems, education, the arts, and his family. He once said, and I quote, "I can't think of anything in my lifetime that I have done half-heartedly," end quote. Herb Wilson is one of a kind.